people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest out of the women's flyweight division as it pertains to newly crowned unified champion Gabriella Alaniz, who we haven't heard all that much from since her revenge win over Marlen Esparza. Apparently, she's going to be in action later on next month against her World Boxing Council mandatory challenger Kenya Enriquez on October 26 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in Gabriella's neck of the woods, promoted by QR Promotions that promotes many of the fights in Argentina. So Kenya Enriquez, the WBC interim champion, will be traveling to Argentina for the title shot she never got with Yesenia Gomez. Sporting a professional record of 28 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 11 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 29 professional bouts, she is actually the more experienced fighter of the two, even though she's the challenger and Gabriella is the champion. Kenya has a lot more fights and a lot more rounds in the bank than Gabriella. Sports professional record of 15 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 6 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 16 professional bouts. Currently in possession of 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight. The only one she doesn't have is the IBF title, the blue belt held by Coachella's own Gabriella Fundora. I vaguely recall hearing that some effort went into making the undisputed title fight between the 2 remaining champions at this weight, Gabriella Alaniz and Gabriella Fundora. But Gabriella Alaniz didn't bite, didn't take the offer, didn't want to give Golden Boy another chance to job her, rob her, like they did in the first Marlen Esparza fight. She decided to do this instead, and while this is a dangerous fight with a dangerous fighter, so long as she doesn't get knocked out, and so long as she makes it competitive, she can win. Last in action in April of this year when she fought Marlen Esparza for the second time and won a split decision. Similar schedule for Kenya. Kenya was in action a little earlier this year in February against Maria Salinas, who she won a unanimous decision against. Now she's supposed to be fighting Gabriella Alaniz, and it's an uphill battle. Kenya has the better resume. Kenya has more experience to boot, more fights and more rounds in the bank with better fighters than many of the fighters that Gabriella has fought. On even terrain, you could give Kenya good odds to win this fight, but they're not on even terrain. This is going down in Argentina, so you can expect Gabriella Alaniz to get the same partial treatment that Marlen got when they fought. Home field advantage is a real thing, and I think Gabriella Alaniz will greatly benefit from that. It would seem that the World Boxing Council was a lot more Johnny on the spot ordering this fight than they were ordering the Gomez versus Enriquez fight years ago. Yesenia Gomez, then WBC light flyweight champion. Kenya was her mandatory for something like 2-3 years, and they never ordered it. They never ordered that fight. Likely because Mauricio Suleiman is good friends with Yesenia's then promoter, Pepe Gomez. They protected Yesenia, but they're not protecting Gabriella. You know they're not, because she just won that belt, and as soon as she won that belt is as soon as it took them to order this fight. And maybe it's because Gabriella is an Argentine and not a Mexican fighter. Maybe it's because the World Boxing Council would prefer that a Mexican fighter hold their title, enter Kenya Enriquez, who they were happy to ignore when it came to Yesenia Gomez, a Mexican fighter and a Mexican champion whose promoter they're good buddies with, but not this time, not now. Now they've decided to acknowledge that Kenya Enriquez exists and Kenya Enriquez deserves her crack at the apple. But they may be a day late and a dollar short, as this fight happening in Argentina greatly affects Kenya's chances of success, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. In men's cruiserweight news, as it pertains to the now cancelled Ryan Rozicki versus Noel Mikaelian fight, the official word from Don King himself, Don King Promotions, West Palm Beach, Florida, Hall of Fame boxing promoter Don King wanted to tell all of his friends and boxing fans to know he is doing fine and is at home in Palm Beach County. King is working with the World Boxing Council and Three Lions Promotions to get a new date for the World Boxing Council World Cruiserweight title match between Noel Mikaelian and Ryan Rozicki. Tell everyone I am doing fine and I love Mike Tyson, said King. What's he bringing up Mike Tyson for? It sounds like he's saying his goodbyes. It sounds like when he says he's doing fine, he isn't. Justifiable cause to believe he isn't when the man is 93 years old. In case you weren't aware, Don is almost 100 years old. And so the story was that the Mikaelian versus Rozicki fight was canceled due to Don King being in poor health. The reigning champion Noel Gavor says he doesn't know what happened. He was getting ready for the fight. It's not on his side, but the fight was canceled. Where Ryan said the fight was canceled because Don King is supposedly ill. So now they're working with Three Lions Promotions, who's based out of Canada, and promote Ryan Rozicki to see the fight through, but there is one issue, one problem. What? Unbeknownst to most, all wrapped up in the heavyweight action yesterday in the cruiserweight division, former champion Jean Pascal returned to action north of the border and racked up a win. Ryan Rozicki went out of his way to be there, saying, "I drove to Quebec last night to challenge Jean Pascal to fight me man-to-man. He proved last night he is still a legitimate contender with a one-punch knockout over an unbeaten opponent. Myself and John are both willing to fight for the World Boxing Council's title. I asked the World Boxing Council to do the right thing and strip the current man pretending to be champion of that title. Let two contenders fight for it. This will be the biggest fight in the history of our country if we can make this happen." What is true, because he's overselling it a bit, is this would be a decent-sized fight north of the border, Ryan Rozicki versus John Pascal. John Pascal is one of the more recognizable Canadian fighters, Canadian-based fighters north of the border, and I think a fight between him and Ryan would do something towards Ryan's profile, move the needle a bit north of the border, because more people know John Pascal than they know Noel Mikaelian anywhere. Even though Noel is WBC Cruiserweight champion since becoming champion, he hasn't done very much. Jean Pascal sports a professional record of 37 wins with 7 losses, 1 draw, 21 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 45 professional bouts. When last we saw him, before yesterday, he was in action in the light heavyweight division opposite the ring Germany's own Michael Eifert, who won a wide unanimous decision over him in March of last year. Over a year later, he comes back as a cruiserweight, takes on Terry Osias in the cruiserweight division, and stops him in the 10th round of a contest scheduled for 10. And that was for a WBO NABO cruiserweight title, a vacant cruiserweight title, where Ryan is proposing that the World Boxing Council strip Noel of his belt and let them fight for it. Jean Pascal is now 41 years old, noticeably smaller than Ryan Rozicki, though still more well-known than Noel Mikaelian. It's not the craziest idea I ever heard, that if for whatever reason Noel cannot satisfy his mandatory challenger, then why shouldn't the WBC strip him? It's not Ryan's fault. Why should he be left in limbo due to Noel's inability to get the job done? And so there lies the dilemma, where Don King says in his official PSA that they're going to try to work with Three Lions Promotions, who promote Ryan, to reschedule the fight between him and Noel. It seems that Ryan is going another route. He's got something else in mind. He doesn't want to waste any more time on Noel. He wants to move on. Wants to fight John Pascal. Given that he is a natural cruiserweight, he's bigger than John Pascal, younger than John Pascal, you could give Ryan reasonable odds to win that fight and knock Jean Pascal out. He's 41 years old. Jean Pascal, a mid-range to inside fighter, like Ryan Rozicki is a mid-range to inside fighter. Honestly, I don't mind that idea. I don't mind it at all. I think that would be a fan-friendly fight. Even better if it could be for the World Boxing Council's title. The question is, would they entertain that? Would they entertain stripping Noel Mikaelian due to his promoter's inability to get this fight done? If they did, and Ryan Rozicki won the fight. And Ryan Rozicki became WBC champion. That opens a lot of doors. All the other cruiserweight champions are all tied up in Riyadh season. Jayo Pataya, Zerto Ramirez, Chris Billum-Smith. Zerto and Chris are about to fight each other. If Ryan can get his hands on a belt, that sets up a unification match with them. If the World Boxing Council does what he wants them to do, strip Noel, let him and John fight for the belt. It's not a bad idea, though that would effectively leave Noel Mikaelian out in the cold, but it's no less than he deserves, postponing this fight 2 times, irrespective of why. It's not supposed to be this difficult to take this long to satisfy a simple mandatory challenger that wants to fight and has been waiting to fight. It's not supposed to be this hard. Everything that's been holding up this fight is on Noel's side of it. Whether it's the cut he says he suffered in sparring or something is going on with Don, it's all from his side. I'm still under the impression that Noel doesn't really want this thing, and what he would prefer is to fight in a Riyadh season show for Riyadh season money. But if anything happens to that belt, if he is stripped by the WBC, and that belt is on the line in a Rozicki versus Pascal fight, there goes the neighborhood, and there goes Noel's meal ticket. That's his only bargaining chip, that he has that belt, that he is WBC champion, and he is an essential cog in the undisputed picture, so long as he's a champion. If he loses that status, they won't need him. In men's heavyweight news, on the heels of Anthony Joshua's latest defeat, not surprisingly, the Wilder conversation, the Joshua versus Wilder fight, has resurfaced. I saw a Twitter user that goes by the name Rack Noble. We went from undisputed world heavyweight title fight to who's got anything left in the tank. Joshua Dubois, Joshua Wilder. 4 losses apiece. Wilder's got 4, Joshua's got 4. Is there still an audience for this fight? Believe it or not, I think there is. That if you made it, would people watch it, and would they be excited? Would they talk about it? I think they would. There's enough rancor there between the 2 factions of fight fans, what remains of Wilder's fan base and what remains of Anthony's, that if you made the fight, people would buy the fight and they would watch the fight if you made it. Though I think it's very obvious to everyone that the fight is not now what it once was. What it was 2 heavyweights, 2 unbeaten champions at the pinnacles of their career, competing to see who's the best. If they were competing now, it would be to see who's got anything left. That's not the same selling point. Carl Froch reacted to Anthony's knockout loss, saying, Joshua got absolutely battered from pillar to post. The worrying thing for me is every time Joshua got clipped on the chin, his legs were gone. His powers of recovery were awful. This is the problem when you get the silk pajamas. You don't want it anymore. I question Joshua's desire to be in that boxing ring anymore. AJ went down face first, ass up, in the air, little breakdance move. Come on, I'm not being horrible, but that's no way for a soldier to go out French on fighting. Do it now, it's not for undisputed, obviously. It's not because they're at their best, they're at their worst. They're at the tail end of their careers. There is a noticeable outcry for not only Deontay Wilder to retire, but for Anthony Joshua to retire. You can add the name of Prince Nassim Ahmed to the growing list of former fighters who think that Anthony should hang them up. He said whether he can or can't come back, I'd prefer he not come back. He's had his day in the sun, he's done great. He won amazing world titles, he defended them, earned his dough. Listen, he should bow out gracefully and that's it. Done. Because when he gets hit on the chin, we don't want to talk about that right now. After the fight, he said he's not going to retire. After the fight, Eddie Hearn said he's got a rematch clause, and he might activate it. After the fight. But after the fight, boxing insider Rick Glaser said, being told by a source that has been very reliable, Eddie Hearn saying Anthony Joshua will exercise his rights to a rematch is really a combination of babaluba and wishful thinking, as Anthony Joshua is going the sensible route. Anthony will retire, and that is clearly the right decision. Anthony Joshua has had a Hall of Fame career and is a wealthy man, and he'll leave boxing with his health intact. Congratulations, Anthony Joshua. Ricky Hatton thinks he should retire. Prince Nassim Ahmed thinks he should retire. Rick thinks he's going to retire. Here's what I think, right? He could rebuild. He could. If it weren't all about getting back to the top right away in a jiffy and staying at the top, if it weren't about that, then he'd have a better chance of rebuilding. If you're talking about a fight with a Joe Joyce, that guy, a Tony Yoka, maybe even a Wilder.
But what do all those guys have in common?
They're approaching the end. Every single one of them. Joe Joyce, Deontay Wilder. Even though Tony Yoka won his last fight, it was against some nobody. If you step him up again, he'll lose again. So what would it mean if Anthony Joshua beat them?
Not a lot.
He would just be delaying the inevitable. I think we've already seen the best of Anthony Joshua, unfortunately. And I'm a big fan of the guy. There's a somber tone because who can really fill his shoes? Can Daniel? Is Daniel gonna bring the money, the attention, and the excitement that Anthony brought to the division?
Probably not.
I have my reservations about how long Daniel will be able to reign as IBF champion or a champion of any kind when his approach is so volatile.
That's a conversation for another day.
Reasons for Anthony to stick around, there are not that many. This guy's made astronomical money. The kind of money most boxers, and I mean most of them, will never see in their careers. He's been a champion, not just a champion, but a unified champion. Not once, but twice.
Most boxers are not going to do that either.
If yesterday's fight was anything, it was a changing of the guard. The old lion versus the young lion. The young lion took over, and it just is what it is. It's the natural passage of time. I can't wholeheartedly say that there's reason enough for Anthony Joshua to stick around and try to rebuild again, try to get back to the top.
That'd just be wishful thinking.
You have to remember what the feeling was going into the fight. That this is one of the fights that he should win. He should be able to beat this guy. Most people, myself included, were confident that he would. If you can't win the fights you're favored to win,
you won't win the others. I'm not even sure that Daniel can beat Martin Bakole or Zile Zhang. And what about when Bakadir Jalalov comes back? He just won another gold medal. He's a dangerous guy. He's a hot potato. If there's a somber tone, it's because the old era is out and the new era is in. It's beginning. Daniel is the leader of the new school, at least for now.
And he's got big shoes to fill. But as far as Anthony, you can say that Anthony's young. He's only 34 going on 35. That's not even old for a heavyweight. No, it's not. But how many boxers have you seen overstay their welcome in the sport to where they could have and should have retired sooner? The money this kid's made, there's not much reason to stick around.
He's had a lot of success in real estate. I'm told he's had a lot of success outside of boxing with other fiscal endeavors to where you don't really need to keep getting punched in the head anymore. And as big a fan of this guy as I am, I can't say I see him winning a title ever again. Not based on what we saw this weekend.
Sorry to say that I would prefer he not stick around chasing his faded glory,
trying to recapture it,
suffering heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak in the process. It's not necessary. Now, if by some chance he exercised his rematch clause and in this fictitious scenario he found a way to beat Daniel and become a 3-time heavyweight champion, of course I would be happy for the guy, and that would be a happy ending. But how many happy endings have you seen in the sport of boxing? How many of those are around?
So maybe retirement is the best thing right now.